I just want you all to know I'm not a bad housekeeper. It's just that ever since it evolved into a life form, my Roomba refuses to work. This is a review of the classic Star Trek The Next Generation episode, The Quality of Life. If you have not seen this episode and you don't want to know what happens in it, be warned, spoilers beyond this point. I continue with my consideration of Star Trek episodes with labor-related themes, in solidarity with the striking writers and actors of the WGA and SAG-AFTRA arriving at a nicely done little TNG show, and nicely done on multiple levels, including thematically. But before I get into all that, let's talk about what happens. The Enterprise has come to the Tyrant system so that Geordi can evaluate the particle fountain, a new orbital mining technology being developed by Dr. Farallon. Getting the fountain operational has been a little more complicated than Farallon hoped it would be, and things get even more complicated than that when a sudden power surge threatens to destroy the whole thing. Geordi strongly advises that they shut down the particle fountain, but Farallon has an alternative, an adorable little robot called an exocomp. Farallon sends the exocomp down a maintenance shaft, and within a few seconds, the malfunction has been repaired, and the exocomp has triumphantly returned. They beam over to the Enterprise, where they're greeted in the transporter room by Data, who walks ahead talking shop with Dr. Farallon, while Geordi follows behind carrying the exocomp and suddenly realizing this is actually a Data episode. In engineering, Farallon explains that the exocomps are equipped with small replicators, which allow them to create whatever tools they need to accomplish the assigned task. They're also programmed to remember each problem they solve, to learn. Data seems instantly fascinated by these little machines. Later, back on the particle fountain station, Data and Farallon are waiting for an exocomp to complete a repair job when the exocomp returns, not having finished its task. Farallon tries to send the exocomp back in, but her control pad burns out. Then, an explosion erupts from the maintenance shaft where the exocomp was working. They take the apparently malfunctioning exocomp back to the Enterprise and check it over. The circuits which connect the exocomp to the control pad are fried. But later, when Data is continuing to examine the exocomp in his quarters, he finds that those same circuits have been repaired. It's as if the exocomp realized it was in danger and acted to preserve itself, exiting the maintenance shaft before the explosion and burning out its own circuitry so that it couldn't be sent back into danger. Then, once the danger had passed, it repaired itself. After a quick consultation with Dr. Crusher, Data comes to a startling conclusion. The exocomps are alive. They have evolved from tools into intelligent life forms, capable of understanding and adapting to their surroundings with an instinct for self-preservation. As such, Data believes it is wrong to continue to exploit the exocomps as laborers. Farallon is not happy about this. She's been counting on the exocomps to help her get the particle fountain operational on time. She insists the exocomps are not alive. They are merely machines, devices, tools to be used as she sees fit. So, Geordi proposes a test. Subject the exocomp to a simulation that recreates the conditions of the explosion aboard the particle fountain and see if the exocomp behaves the same way. They do. And it doesn't. The exocomp fails to return within the allotted time. If this hadn't been a test, it would have been destroyed, meaning, so it seems, that what happened earlier was just a fluke, and the exocomps are not life forms after all. But, like a good scientist, Data knows you can't learn anything from a single result, so he repeats the experiment over and over and over again. Each time he gets the same result, until Dr. Crusher drops by to see how he's doing. While Crusher and Data are talking, the exocomp returns from the maintenance shaft. This is unexpected. Every other time, Data has given the exocomp a recall command at the end of the experiment. This time, he was talking to Dr. Crusher and didn't issue the command. But the exocomp returned anyway. What's more, the exocomp has a different tool on its little nose than the one it left with. Data gave the exocomp the tool needed to repair the simulated problem, but the exocomp switched to the tool necessary to deactivate the simulation. Not only are the exocomps alive, they're smart. This one realized it was being tested, that the danger wasn't real, and acted accordingly. Well, that settles that. They're alive, can't exploit them as workers anymore. Unfortunately, before Data can tell anyone about this result, there's another crisis aboard the particle fountain, which is really starting to look like a shit show. The particle stream malfunctions again, flooding the station with radiation. Captain Picard is aboard to conduct an inspection, and he and Geordi end up trapped there after the rest of the crew beams over to the Enterprise. Farallon suggests reconfiguring the exocomps to act as photon torpedoes. If they're detonated at just the right point, the explosion will disrupt the particle beam. Data objects, informing Riker and the others that he still believes the exocomps are alive. Riker, wanting to rescue Picard and Geordi, is frustrated. Data, are you really going to sacrifice the lives of two of your comrades and closest friends to save some cute little machines? Yeah. Riker proposes a compromise. Ask the exocomps to help. If they agree, okay, it's their choice. If they refuse, also okay. Hello, Captain Riker. Data gives the exocomps instructions for the suicide mission, but instead of either accepting or refusing, they alter the instructions. Rather than allowing themselves to be used as explosives, they beam over with power taps on their noses and form a laser triangle, which enables them to do a technobabble thing that weakens the radiation on the space station enough that Picard and Geordi can be beamed to safety. Once Picard and Geordi are aboard the Enterprise, the transporter chief tries to beam out the exocomps, but he can only lock on to 2 of the 3. Geordi and Data realize what happened. One exocomp had to stay behind to continue disrupting the radiation field. Otherwise, none of them could have made it out. The exocomp who remained sacrificed itself for the others. Farallon finally admits that the exocomps are alive and agrees not to treat them as tools anymore. And Data tells Captain Picard the reason he was willing to protect the exocomps even at the potential cost of the lives of Picard and Geordi. When my rights as a person were questioned, you stood up for me, Data tells Picard. The exocomps didn't have anyone else, so I stood up for them, just like you did for me. And Picard's like, yeah, I get it. Before I get into the themes of the episode, particularly those of interest from a labor relations perspective, I want to talk about what a well-put-together show this is in terms of its plot and its characters. This is a very well-balanced episode in terms of the way it uses the principal ensemble. It's mostly a Data episode, but it finds things for everyone else to do that feel natural and important. For starters, the first scene, which I didn't mention in my plot summary because it doesn't really have anything to do with the plot, is a poker game between Crusher, Riker, Worf, and Geordi. Because this is one of those episodes where Geordi is randomly growing a beard, Crusher observes that she's never trusted men with beards. After some good-natured ribbing, the bearded contingent at the table agrees to a bet. If Crusher wins the next hand of poker, they will all shave. If Crusher loses, she will become a brunette. They're called to duty before they can finish the hand, of course, but it's a clever, character-driven scene, and it serves to remind us of Crusher's feminist streak in a playful way, setting her up as the one Data goes to for advice about the exocomps because she's not just a doctor, she's also into the whole human rights thing. From there, we see the other main characters participating in the story in logical ways that allow them to contribute to the narrative without feeling shoehorned in. The plot is simple enough that it provides breathing room for additional character beats throughout, like Crusher healing herself of a minor injury sustained during a Batleth lesson with Worf. The only characters that feel sort of left out are Troy, who only gets a single line during a meeting in the observation lounge, and Riker, who is absent entirely from that meeting and, after the opening poker scene, only shows up near the end to take charge during the climactic crisis. But writers neglecting Troy is nothing unusual, unfortunately, and Riker's absence for most of the episode is explained by the fact that Jonathan Frakes directed this one. Generally speaking, the direction and the writing exhibit an attention to craft and an eye for detail that help elevate this episode. As director, Frakes mostly keeps things basic, but also finds opportunities to infuse a touch of style in ways that aren't distracting. For example, this brief scene of Data in his quarters talking to the computer about the exocomp. Instead of a static master shot of Data at the desk intercut with some coverage of the exocomp, Frakes shoots the whole thing in a single shot, starting behind the desk on Data's right and slowly rotating around to the front before finally pushing in close to end it. Simple, at least simple looking, but also elegant and fluid. The script by Naren Shankar likewise keeps things simple, finding those meaningful and/or fun character beats along the way, but focusing the plot on the exocomps and Data's dawning realization of what they are. There's not really a B-plot per se. The scenes depicting the efforts to get the particle fountain up and running function like a B-plot, but they're so closely tied into the exocomps plot that I don't really consider them separate from it. As for what the episode is actually about, as is the case with the last episode I reviewed, Symbiosis, you can read the quality of life in a few different ways. I'm choosing to look at it through a labor-related lens, but it can also be read as an argument in favor of animal rights, or a general plea for us to recognize and respect the humanity of others, regardless of how different from us they might appear to be. As stand-ins for workers, the exocomps do a good job. As you would expect, they're efficient little buggers. Like most workers, they're willing to do the job they've been engaged to do. They'd just like a bit of basic consideration, that's all. The exocomps do what Dr. Farallon tells them to do until the task becomes a threat to their existence. Then, self-preservation kicks in, and they walk off the job. Seems reasonable to me. Also, like most workers, the exocomps know more about how to do the jobs they've been tasked with than the people who are telling them what to do, because they have the relevant experience. That's how they're able to come up with a better solution to the episode's climactic crisis than blowing themselves up. As a stand-in for management, Dr. Farallon is also excellent. The essential conflict between labor and management is due to the lack of recognition on the part of management of the value of labor's contribution and of the fundamental respect to which those who perform the labor are entitled. This is certainly the case with the present impasse between the artists represented by WGA and SAG-AFTRA and the major film and television studios represented by the AMPTP. This lack of appreciation and respect is perfectly embodied by Farallon, who flat out refuses to accept that the exocomps are intelligent beings with rights that should be respected. To her, they are literally nothing but tools. They exist to be manipulated, to be exploited. They are expendable. They are replaceable. No wonder they go on strike. What's the resolution? What changes to allow the exocomps to go back to work? They're treated like people. Their rights are respected. They aren't ordered to go back on the job and kill themselves and expected to just comply. They're given a choice. And in case it's not patently obvious whose side we're supposed to be on here, the exocomps themselves are designed to be just absurdly adorable. With their chunky little bodies and magic tool-making noses, how can you not love the little shits? And then at the end, one of them gives its life so that the others can escape? What brave little toasters. Those are my thoughts on the quality of life. What do you think of this episode? Please share your thoughts with me in the comments. If you'd like to support this channel, and I sure wish you would if you can afford it, you can do so by becoming a patron at patreon.com/Steve Shives, becoming a channel member by clicking the join button, or by making a one-time gift by clicking the thanks button, or via PayPal or Venmo. Links are in the description. Don't forget to join me and my best friend Jason Harding this weekend for our review of episode 10 of Season 2 of Star Trek Strange New Worlds, the season finale. Our review will be up sometime on Saturday. And please come back next week for another retro review. Next time, this batch of retro reviews focusing on Star Trek's labor-themed episodes continues with a look at the labor-themed episode to end all labor-themed episodes, a classic from Star Trek Deep Space Nine, Bar Association. I'll see you next week for that. Thanks for watching, and take care, everybody.